Please raise your hands if you've ever been asked to behave like a lady. Okay. Now raise your hands if you've ever been asked, be a real man. We all have been there and we have heard that. And it's interesting that with these messages, we already know what they mean, right? It seems that we already know what behaving like a lady or being a real man is supposed to be like. Isn't that fascinating? For some time I thought I'd miss a key class in school. But the truth is, it goes much deeper than any course we could take. What we could see as innocent messages actually are reminding us of our place in the world, of how we should behave in order to be properly behave as women and men, in order to be liked and accepted. These messages are about the normative understanding of masculinity and femininity in our society that determine how we should think, feel, and act in order to belong. And doesn't matter where we go, these messages always find us. They can come from family, friends, from school, from the media, from the beauty industry, and from even ourselves. But what does it mean to behave like a lady? It depends on class, culture, age, but at the end, a lady always knows how to behave, isn't it? And if you have been told that, then it's already a warning sign about your reputation. I received this message many times, and I felt the risk on my skin. The price of disobeying is being stigmatized as a bad woman, too bossy, pushy, or not feminine enough. Does it ring a bell? Men and women are together in the pressure to conform, but differently. As women, we are asked to behave like ladies, not so much to be real women. It seems that it's more the quality of the womanhood that is at stake, not the womanhood in itself. And this different, it's quite intriguing. It made me think. A lot of questions came at me, questions with no answer. What is real manhood supposed to be like? Are men already real? What do they have to do in order to be even more real? I guess that by now you have many ideas in mind. My mission today is to challenge all of them. But first, let's go deeper. Let's deconstruct our notions of masculinity. Let's look at the real man straight into the eyes for a while. Our understanding of real manhood, of manhood, depends on many aspects. Historical context, social context, the place on the map where you live, or even the place of the city where you live, right? So we can say that we have different notions of manhood and what counts as real manhood. For example, at a young age, what is considered to be manhood is often associated to risk-taking practices and toxic masculinities. Those practices that many times are justified with the mantra, boys will be boys. And somehow, manhood becomes a race, one that young men cannot afford losing. Then, as boys jump into adulthood, manhood gets more serious, and men are supposed to be responsible and in control, and inspire respect, especially with age. Social status and also race-related norms affect as well our notions of masculinity, especially those norms created in the colonial Europe of the 19th century. There, where you're up in the social hierarchy, it matters. Then masculinity can be associated to physical strength and bodily instinct, or otherwise being celebrated as the highest example of knowledge and abstract reason. So different contexts, different power relations create different gender norms and a variety of masculinities and a variety of what counts as real manhood. But there is one unwritten rule that is always present and absolute: the obligation to comply with the real man. But what's behind the real man? What are the ingredients of this concentrated and powerful formula that teaches boys to fulfill social expectations? As a matter of fact, the race of the real man can never be won. In our society, be a real man is associated to have a job. Professional success is what defines a man. A real man should be self-sufficient, because asking for help is for the weak. He should be rational rather than emotional. And if he's single, he should have many women. If he has a family, he should be the provider rather than the caregiver. So this formula is quite easy, but will he be happy? What do you think? Well, the answer is no. As I said, the race of the real man can never be won. The idea behind it, the idea that he should comply with one way to be in order to exist in social terms, is not only unfair and harmful, but is also fundamentally wrong. In gender justice activism, we see the negative effects of gender stereotypes on both men and women. And in men, they activate these dynamics of competition and dominance that slowly become toxic for themselves and for others. The myth of the real man supports misogynistic and homophobic practices because femininity is understood as something in opposition, to be rejected. And homophobia is internalized in order to construct and maintain heterosexual masculinity. The real man is, above all, a heavy mask, one that puts pressure on men and limits their self-expressions and harms their mental health. Every time that the boy grows into the myth of the real man, he does so by lacking the emotional skills that later will put a relationship at stake. This mask is asking him to disconnect from how he truly feels. And if his desires are different from the norm, then he feels stressed and isolated. Behind everything, there is one powerful force, one that knows no gender: fear. Fear of not being man enough, fear of not meeting others' expectations, fear of being left out. And the paradox is that the real man is asking men to be less real, because it assumes that there is one way to be, and it doesn't even make men happy. You know, throughout this year studying why and how men get involved in gender justice activism, I heard a lot of stories. And I found a much stronger force. One that is both collective and individual. One that can transform everything. One with which we can gain our power back. A force to trust our own feelings and who we are in the face of challenge. Feminism. Feminism is for everybody, said Bell Hooks. And she was right. Throughout history, feminism has been associated to women, of course. But it's now time to change that, because men can and should be feminists as well. We feminists cannot tell them that it's going to be the most comfortable and chilling journey, because it's not. But they will find depth and self-reflection and self-criticism. It will mean understanding the patriarchy and their role in it. It will mean rethinking power and masculinity and privileges. It will mean sharing spaces, listening more and speaking less. It will mean disrupting the status quo they maintain. But I believe that given the chance to explore that, men can find in feminism a safe space for their own personal liberation. You know, the stories that I heard about. I heard stories of responsibility with the men like Miguel, for whom being a feminist is not only about supporting his partner, her professional life, sharing housework. He wants to be accountable as a father. He wants to be a caring father. And for him, this is what egalitarian fatherhood is all about. But I also have heard stories of reinvention with the men like Gianluca, who once told me, "My life felt like a never-ending marathon. I had all the experiences that I wanted. I had adventures and women. And at 40, I was over. I was deeply unhappy. And nobody told me that happiness was not there. But then, gathering among men, sharing our personal stories with this feminist practice, then I saw that I was not the only one. Listening to other men's stories made me realize that I could also speak about negative emotions, what normally we don't talk about as men. And this, sharing, felt incredibly liberating. This, as you can imagine, is the most fascinating part of my job. When they open up and share the stories, the mask of the real man falls down, and the myth of the real man crumbles. Then I see them, and then I know there is hope. Somewhere, there is a world full of possibility and answers, a world in which we can all do and become more. Many men have already embarked on this feminist journey, becoming actively engaged, crossing at the other side of the patriarchy, and bringing others along the way, becoming agents of change. And there are many, many more to come. For far too long, we have been searching for the real man, without realizing that what truly mattered was if those men were real. And those men, in turn, have been busy pretending rather than wondering what they wanted to be. Today, I want to ask men here to pose themselves these important questions. Who am I? Why I do what I do? How can I build a most feminist world and I challenge patriarchy for myself and for others? A world in which both men and women and people of all genders can live beyond social and gender expectations. A world in which everybody can find or craft their own place. Well, the good news is that it's up to us to make all of this possible. It's up to us to redefine what is worth becoming. So, next time that you see a man or a woman behaving out of socially accepted notions of masculinity and femininity, wait, don't judge, don't comment. Observe, admire, celebrate. Because against all odds, odds that you may never imagine, they are being brave. And they are making room for others to be brave. If you ever urge to ask someone to be something, don't ask them to be real men or ladies. Instead, encourage them to be simply real. Thank you very much.